Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen. Something a little different today. There's been an ongoing problem of late with the lighting here in the Aussie Shed. When I built the Aussie Shed a few years ago, being the pathetic tight ass that I am, I used second-hand twin 4-foot fluoro fittings that have been pulled from government refurbs. They're a bit of a mixture of the older magnetic ballast types that have a separate starter and the slightly newer electronic jobbies. At the time, it was a good solution, but lately there have been quite a few failures of the lights with both types of ballasts. And not to mention the fact that I'm really tired of looking at all of the mismatched tubes. And let's be honest, fellas, it's a little bit displeasing to the eye looking at an uneven pair. So what's the solution, Trevor? I hear you ask. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, here in the Aussie Shed, we're going to peel back the veil of secrecy, dispel the myths, and reveal the dark art of rewiring all of your fluoro fixtures to suit LED tubes. Cost-wise, it comes in at under $20 per twin tube fitting, and that's kangaroo dollars, ladies and gentlemen, so about $2.50 US. After scouring the interwebs for the cheapest solution, I ended up back at the local Bunnings Hardware. And for those of you in the US, it's kind of like a poor man's Home Depot. And this is what I purchased. These little beauties here, ladies and gentlemen, they are Osram Substitute Value Tube Conversion Kits. What they have in each kit is 2 4-foot LED tubes and 2 LED starters. The LED starters aren't really a starter, they're basically just a fuse. And what these do is they allow you to fit this particular type of LED tube straight into a fitting that runs the old-fashioned magnetic ballasts with the starters, with no rewiring necessary. So a really great solution for those of you out there who aren't prepared to attack any of the wiring yourself. I'll just give you a bit of a look here. Osram Substitute, 1800 lumens, LED, 16 watt, 30,000 hours, cool white, 4000K, which isn't really cool white in my books, but anyway. But for those of you who are a little bit more prepared to dive into the deep end, I'll show you how to completely rewire all of your fixtures, whether they are the old magnetic ballast type or the slightly more modern electronic type. The problem with these retrofit systems is you still have to be able to power up the magnetic ballasts for the LEDs to be able to work. So if you've blown a ballast, the tubes won't work. So what I'm about to show you is how to completely gut out the fixtures, because you don't actually need any of the transformers. These will run directly from your mains power, but you do have to rewire the fittings. It's very simple. But I'm in no way saying that anyone out there who isn't comfortable doing electrical work, remember this is mains power, it will kill you. If you're not confident working with this stuff, you shouldn't do it. Anything like this, you should always get a licensed electrician to do this kind of work for you. And for the purpose of this video, let's just assume that I'm a licensed electrician. Sorry, bit of a cough. Anyhow, what I'll do is I'll get both types of fittings and throw them down here on the bench. I'll show you how to set one up the way these are intended, which is just as a direct fit. So you can just whack the tubes in, pull the starters out, plug the LED starters in, away you go, or rewire them completely from scratch yourself, which in my opinion is the best option. You don't need any transformers anymore. And for me, that's the main reason why I've got these, is because I was having transformer failures. And with this particular system, if your transformers fail, your LEDs won't work unless you rewire the fitting. So I'll go and grab a twin 4-foot fluoro fitting with magnetic ballasts, and I'll go and grab one with electronic ballasts, get them out here on the bench, give you a bit of a look. Okay, so here we are on the bench. 2 different types of fittings here. Magnetic ballast type that has your starters, and an electronic type over here. This particular unit has a single electronic ballast that does both tubes. They also come in a configuration with 2 single electronic ballasts. This is a single electronic ballast here that I pulled out of one of my existing units that had blown. You can see that she's well and truly let the smoke out, ladies and gentlemen. And it is a similar configuration to the magnetic ballast type in the fact that it has two of these, one for each tube. So you do see a little bit of variation as far as what you look at when you open them up. But for the point of this exercise, that's all we really need to see. There's a quite obvious difference between both types. The main one being there are no starters on the electronic types. There's just a transformer, either a single or a double. Both of these fittings are fully functional, which I'll demonstrate in a moment. The Osram Substitube kits that I'll be using here, if you're not rewiring the fitting and you have electronic ballasts, you can't use this particular type of LED tube. They are designed as a direct fit into a magnetic ballast type that has the starters. Under those circumstances, you do not need to do any rewiring. You just basically pop the tubes out, pop the starters out, and pop the LED starters in, which are supplied in with the kit, which I'll give you a bit of a look at shortly. And they go straight in, no wiring needed. I'm going to set that up in that way as a demonstration, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to completely gut both of these fittings and wire them directly. In my opinion, you're better off to gut the fittings anyway. That means there will be no compatibility issues between the two types of fittings. A lot of you guys might be in a similar situation to myself. We have a bit of a mixture of fittings, and I just think this is a really cost-effective way of converting all your fluoros over to LED. I'll get the older fitting here with a magnetic ballast up and running in standard configuration, and then I'll show you how easy it is to transfer it to LED if you're not happy doing any wiring. So I've just dropped a couple of tubes into this fitting. I'll just power it up just to give you a bit of a demo that it still functions properly. Typical flicker of a fluoro starting up. That one on that side is obviously a little bit lazier, but as you can see, it all functions absolutely fine. So I'll whip those tubes out and I'll demonstrate the process of replacing the starters and running the LED tubes. The first thing we need to do is get rid of the conventional tubes. We'll just take them out and put them to one side. Obviously power is now disconnected. I've just temporarily wired a plug onto this just for this demonstration. Normally this would be wired in your mains power. So it's just a matter of removing your conventional starters. They just twist and turn. As you can see here, it's just a matter of twisting it to the left, unlock it, pull it out. Absolutely dead simple. When you take your substitute tubes out of the box, one end of the tube will have this configuration on the end, and this is your LED starter. And basically it's not actually a starter, it's just a fuse. So it just comes off that, just twist and turn the same way as you would if you were putting it into the fitting on the fluoro. Go in and turn. Both ends of the tube are the same. This end of the tube is marked. Substitute value, blah, 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 blah. Not for use with electronic control gear. So you can see that these are actually made only for a direct fit replacement in a fluoro tube fitting that has magnetic ballasts and starters, unless you do what we're going to do shortly. Okay, so that gives you a bit of a look at the tube. There is no end that these have to go in. They can be run either way. Some of the other tube styles are end specific. They have to be powered up on one end. These can be powered up on either end. You can see a line going through here. That's where your LED strip is attached to the inside of the tube. So obviously you just orientate it when you put it in the fitting so that that's going up against the top and your LEDs are shining out through the other way. But I'll drop the starters in and throw the tubes in and we'll turn this guy straight on. So as I mentioned, these are your LED starters, if you can call them that. They just say T8 LED HRC type fuse. And that's basically all they are. They are a fuse. Fuse for LED use. So, old starters out, LED fuses in. We just put them straight in. Go, bit of a turn. LED tubes in any orientation. Put them in, give them a turn. Ideally you just want to turn them, as I mentioned earlier, so that the LED strip is towards the back of the tube. We'll put one way and one the other way here just to demonstrate that they do work either ended. and lock the tubes in. So we should be ready to go. I'll just power it up. Instant start. No problems at all. It's that easy. Take the tubes out, swap the starters over, put the new LED tubes in, and you're all fired up and ready to go. Not a problem at all. But as I say, if one of your ballasts do go out, in this configuration, your LED tube won't work. And unfortunately, this system isn't suitable for your electronic ballasts. But now, I'll show you how to completely gut the fittings, and once that is done, it does not matter whether it is an electronic ballast type fitting or a magnetic ballast type fitting, they all work exactly the same. We'll get the LED tubes and the LED starters out, and we'll start stripping out this fitting. Be careful to make sure that you don't have any power onto the fitting, of course. Last thing you want to do at this point is bloody zapping yourself. So the first thing you want to do is just cut all the wires that go to the transformers. And in the bin with these guys. So that's pretty much everything out of here now. We're only going to need one of these holders in the final configuration. So we'll take one out and just leave one in position. For the sake of this type of setup, these substitute fuses are rated for 2 fluoro tubes. Yeah, so we only need one holder basically. One holder per twin 4-foot fitting. The wiring that I will be using here, it's just 1.5mm twin and earth, and I'll just strip the cables out of the outer insulation, and that'll give us the right grade of cable to rewire this fitting with. And for all the wiring connections that we'll be making here, I'm just using your typical single screw insulated connector. These are available at all of your electrical supply places, hardware stores. They're the proper approved way of connecting cables within your home, behind light switches, etc. It means there's absolutely no soldering required with this conversion. It's just a simple wire strip and screw connection setup. So I'll start this first fitting now that we've stripped out all the transformers, and I'll zoom in on one end and just show you how to start. Alright, so this is the end of our fitting here. You can see it's exactly the same setup as the electronic ballast fitting here. 2 wires going to each of these holders in the end. I think these are referred to as tombstones, probably due to the shape of them. You can see you have 2 wires going into each of them. These I think are referred to as a non-shunted tombstone, which is generally the case in Australia. There is another type which is called a shunted, which will either have 1 wire or 2 wires together on one side. I've never actually come across those on any of the fluoro fittings that I have fiddled around with. So if you do come across something like that, just take care, because this will only work with non-shunted fittings. And the easiest way to tell the difference is if you have a multimeter and you touch the 2 connections together inside the tombstone, on a shunted fitting you'll get a connection. Set your multimeter to ohms and you'll get a connection, because both of these are actually connected together within the fitting. Whereas on your standard type non-shunted, which these are, they're completely independent. So these are the 2 wires that go to this fella here. I'll just quickly strip them off. I'll just grab the multimeter here, set it onto ohms with a beeper, and just check for continuity between the 2 wires. And you'll see we're on both of the wires there, and there is no continuity. If this was a shunted connector, you would get continuity, your display would go off, and you would get a beep coming out of your multimeter. So yep, non-shunted, which I think they typically all are in this country. So I just thought I'd point that out in case anyone from overseas was watching and was just like, no, that's not what ours look like. I think this is why. Anyhow, let's get back to it. So where we go from here, you just take the 2 middle wires, okay, the 2 innermost wires that go to these fittings on here, and we'll just cut them both off in the one spot. Now we'll take these handy wire strippers, which are bloody fantastic. They're just a cheap pair on eBay. And I've got absolutely no complaints with them, I must say. I'll even leave a link to them in the description. They are bloody fantastic. So this is some of our stripped out cable from the spool earlier. Strip him off. Twist all three of these guys together. Tell you what, it's a bit awkward to do when you're filming. I'll have a crack at it from this side. Twist all these guys together, neaten it up a little bit. Throw a connector on. Make sure you've got the appropriate amount of wire here so that it fits neatly into the connector. Bottoms out and doesn't leave any exposed wire poking out from your connector, and you can see it finishes in exactly the right spot so you're not screwing into the plastic, so you're screwing into the copper wire. Bit of a trap for young players there, folks. Do that up nice and tight. Stage 1, this will be your active input. We'll head up to the other end and do the same thing up here. And on this end you'll notice that this wire is actually looped together, and that's so that in your original configuration it just transfers power across from this one over to this guy. So what we're going to do is snip that in the middle, strip it off. That's why wire strippers are handy, folks, in awkward situations where you can't get in there with your side cutters or anything. You can go really close to stuff and just strip them off, and you are absolutely sweet. On this end we'll put our neutral wire, which is the black. Strip him off the same. Once again, twist all three together. Give it a little snip to tidy it up to the right length, and throw on your connector. Very, very simple indeed. We'll just poke that back down in there. So now, we go back into the center here, and we now have, just pull this wire through. We have our active and our neutral. I'll just trim these up, just because they've been a bit of a pain. At this point, this is where we connect up the remaining starter holder, which will now take our LED fuse. Whichever end we're working with at this point doesn't really matter. So we'll just take the end closest to here, and we actually run our neutral wire at this point. So we snip the black wire that we bought from the center that we just did, and we now take it to one side of the starter holder wire here, and it can be either one. So strip it off. Strip your neutral wire off, twist them together, get it nice and tight. It's got to be nice and tight, folks. Tight good, loose not good. And throw on one of your insulated connectors. Beautiful. Now, the other side of your starter here, it has to go back under, and being that it's a continuation of the neutral side of the circuit, we'll continue on with the black wiring from here. So, strip this guy off, bit more of the neutral wire here, the black stuff, strip that off. And twist them together. Trim it off so it's nice and neat. Throw on a connector. Lay them down in the fitting. Now, this black wire that we have just connected onto the other side of the starter there, it now runs back into your terminal block here, which is where our main power is connected in. Okay, so this is our connector block here. This is where our fitting is wired into your mains power through the roof or wherever your cable comes in. This is where I've temporarily got like a power cord plugged into it. It has active, neutral and earth written on it. You can see your earth wire here that comes in from your mains power is connected to the fitting on the other side. There's a metal tab that's bent up, and this is screwed onto it, and what that does is that creates your earth point for your fitting. So you must have your terminal block either mounted directly onto your fitting to give you an earth, or it has to have a wire coming out of the terminal block that is screwed off into a connector on the fitting to earth it. This particular one, as you can see, there's a tab, so it's all good to go. So we'll follow the layout of active, neutral and earth that's on this. A bit hard to see, so I might just grab a Sharpie and mark it on so it's a little bit more visible. Alright, so we've got active, neutral and earth in the center. It's also marked on the fitting up here. There's an A neutral, and there's an earth symbol, which looks like that. So, just so there's no confusion, I just quickly swapped out this terminal block here, ladies and gentlemen. The original one that was in this had had pushing connectors on in these two positions here, and the gauge of the wire that I'm using here, it doesn't quite fit in the push-ons, so I just swapped it out for this one over here that is all screw-in. Much easier. You can actually just use your screw-on connectors here to do the same job, but it just makes it a bit more of a pain when you're wiring the fitting up into your mains power up in the ceiling or whatever. But I had a couple of spares that are all screw terminals, and I thought just for the ease of the video it would certainly be a lot easier just to show you how to screw it all together. So we'll carry on with a screw-in terminal block. Same deal. This just had a couple of dodgy push-ins on it that don't fit the wiring that I'm using. Back to it. So as I was about to say, your neutral wire here that's come straight from over there that we can't see right now, it just goes into the neutral side of your connector that's marked with your N, which is your blue or black wire that comes in from your mains power. I'll just shove that straight in there, tighten him down. Beautiful. Okay, now this is the red wire that's here is our active wire that comes down to this position from the first connection that we made. Trim it off to the right size, and it goes into your active side. So at this point, that's all the connections made there on your terminal block. I'll just pan back and I'll show you what to do with the rest of the remaining wires. So what we're left with now, we have a wire, the very outside wires on both sides of the fitting. So you've got these two outside ones on that side, and you've got these two outside ones on this side. Basically, they just have to be connected. As in, these two have to be connected together, and these two have to be connected together. So for the point of this exercise, just to keep it simple, I'll just keep it as some white wire to make these connections with, just so it's the least confusing possible for the video. So joiner. Strip him off. Alright, so this wire here, twist him together, throw a screw-on terminal connector on it, strip off our other end, twist them together, get it nice and tight. Ooh, that's nice and tight. Trim him off, throw on a connector, and that is that side done. Now, same process for this side. So joiner wire, strip him off, twist him together, throw in a connector, hook him up to this end, strip it off, twist it together, finish it off with the pliers, trim it up, screw on your terminal. And that's it, folks, all done. So I'll just take the camera off and we'll just go back over everything. So the first thing we did was cut those two center wires here to the center of the fitting there, and that's where we put in our active. Our active goes all the way down and goes into your terminal block on your active position. Up this end, same deal. We snip the two in the center. There was an extra wire on this this center terminal on this side. It's not something you'll always find, but it just needs to be capped off if you do find that situation. So the centre wire here, just that join was snipped off. Then your black, which is your neutral, connected into that. Runs down, connects into either side of your fuse holder, which then continues back as a black wire. This guy here goes into the neutral side of your terminal block. These remaining wires on the outside, they just get connected together. Make sure you connect them to the same side, don't cross them over. So, you know, the wire that runs along that side goes to the one that runs along that side. Same deal with this side. The one that runs along this side, we connect it up to the one off this side. And that is all there is to the wiring side of it. So all we've got left to do now is just tidy the wiring up so it's all nice and neat in there. I'll just grab some cable ties and we'll neaten all this up, and then we'll turn him on for a bit of a demo. And there we have it, all clipped in and ready to go. We'll just throw our LED starter / fuse in to our remaining starter holder. Clip him in. Throw the cover on. Couple of our tubes. Once again, turn them so that your LED strip is at the back. As I did before, I'll put the sticker at opposite ends just to show that they work when they're turned either way, so there's no confusion about which end has to be going which way. I'll throw this one up this end. Righto, so we're all back together. See, we've got a little bit of a hole there where our other starter went in. You can leave the other one in there just as a blank if you like, but it may be a little bit confusing. So now we have a completely rewired fitting. There are no transformers that can go wrong and cause the fitting not to work. Now, if a tube goes out, the problem is the tube. So we'll plug him in and see if it all just works fantastically. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Instantly on. So as you can see, it works brilliantly. And that's just direct mains power feed. No ballasts, no starters. The tubes can be turned either end and you are good to go. Plus, you get the added benefit of half the power consumption. Your original tubes drew 36 watts and these new tubes are only 16. So it's actually less than half the power consumption. Good saving on electricity. It's a modification that pays for itself very quickly. And with that information, you should be good to go. So now that we've done your older magnetic type, we'll turn this one off, take it off the bench. And we'll now do that electronic fitting over there. Exactly the same process, but we'll do another one just to make sure you're all good. All right, let's get rid of this one. One thing quickly I did forget to mention, ladies and gentlemen, is these kits do come with a sticker. And this is just so that no one tries to fit a conventional type fluoro tube to it, which won't work, and it will actually short and blow the fuse. That is actually the main purpose of the LED fuse, because the unit will actually work without the fuse if you just wire it directly, but it is solely there for the purpose of if someone does actually put an older fluorescent tube back in it, it will blow and stop everything shorting out. So yeah, make sure you put these on. Always good to be nice and safe. Alright folks, time to get into this electronic transformer fitting. Apologies if I sound a bit more nasally than usual. Blowing a gale outside, and the wind tends to carry the pollen and stuff around, which really seems to give me the shits. Anyway, let's get into this. Electronic transformers, just quickly again, if there's a dual transformer like this one that does both tubes, all well and good. If there's two singles, all the same thing. Basically, we've just got to remove them and leave the wiring. From the amount of connectors around this, it would appear that this transformer has been replaced at some point. I don't think this is the original transformer for this unit. So we'll just disconnect it all, take it out, and we will do the same wiring that we did on the last fitting. So I'll get all this out and we'll wire it up. Righto, so there we are. Transformers are all gone. We're left with exactly the same configuration as when we moved the magnetic transformers. So we just approach it in the same way. First thing we'll do, we'll run our active cable and we'll move on from there. So just as we did on our first fitting, we take the two center wires here together and we twist them in with our red active feed and put our screw-on connector on. We'll just bring this wire down to the point where our power comes in to our terminal block, strip him off, twist him up, straight into the active terminal, which we've got marked on here. So we'll just wire them in there. That's the entire active side of the fitting completed. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's exactly the same layout here as we did on the previous fitting. We take the 2 center wires, we'll snip them off, strip them, and this is where we install our LED fuse. So we'll just strip off one end of this starter holder, actually. And just to be a little bit less confusing, I'll actually throw the LED fuse in there, just so you can keep an eye on that component and see exactly what's going on with it. So as I said, we've stripped off one end of it now. It gets connected into these 2 ends that we stripped off out of the center of this end here. Just run all 3 together, twist them up, finish them off with the pliers, get it all nice and tight, cut it off to the right length to suit your screw-on connector, throw a connector on it, and the other end of this goes into your neutral fitting on your main terminal block. We don't have the black wires here with this configuration just because the existing wiring is already long enough and there's no need to extend it anywhere, so we may as well, rather than, you know, cutting it off and then throwing pieces in to extend it. You know, it's always a good thing if you can just leave everything where it is. This is a single strand wire here, single core wire in the center of this. So I've just cut it off long and then doubled it back on itself just to make it a little bit more substantial, so that when it's screwed into the terminal block, there's a little bit more there to hold it in. Rightio, so that fella there's in. As you can see, this terminal block, it screws onto a tab on the fitting, which gives us our earth connection to ground the fitting, just like on the last one. So that's the bulk of that done. Now all we've got left to do now is join the sides up. So we've got outside wire to outside wire. All the wiring in this unit is a little bit better suited to this configuration than in the last one. There's no need to put extensions in these. Everything pretty much fits. You never know your luck how things are going to work. Strip it off a bit more so we've got enough to put a terminal connector on there. Twist these 2 together. I think for that looks good to me. We'll throw a terminal straight on it, screw him down. Same with the one on this side. He's going to reach all the way. So remember, outside to outside and outside to outside, and you won't go wrong. Twist him up, throw on a connector, and that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is that fitting complete. Exactly the same layout as the last fitting. A little bit more tidier in this one because the wiring was better suited to the conversion. We didn't have to make all the extensions that we did on the last one. This guy's even got some nice little clips for clipping our cables down into. We'll get in here with some cable ties anyway and clean it up. With your LED fuse / starter, there's nowhere for it to protrude through the cover plate like it did on the previous fitting, and there's no need for it to. So we'll just leave it down inside the fitting. It's as I say, it doesn't function like a starter. In the other units do, so it's not something that'll ever need to be replaced. And unless the fuse is blown, which in that case you'll be pulling the unit apart anyway. So there is no need for it to be poking out. So we'll just leave him tucked in down inside the fitting. We'll be bloody good to go. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. You can see this fitting looks a lot neater just because we don't have all those extra joints in there, but the wiring configuration is exactly the same as the previous one that we did with the magnetic ballasts in it. Exactly the same layout in every way. I'll just quickly wire a plug lead into this so we can turn it on for a bit of a demo. Plug lead's now wired in. We'll throw our cap on. You can see our warning stickers are already in place, so no one mistakenly fits a standard type fluorescent tube to it. Drop our tubes in. Once again, no particular end, we can just throw them in as we please. Time to plug it in for the money shot. Here we go. Oh, look at that. Instant start. Beautiful, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful. So as you see again, that's a completely empty fitting now. No transformers, no nothing. Just a hidden LED fuse inside sitting in the starter holder. 2 nice brand new low wattage LED tubes And if these tubes ever blow, you'll be able to replace them with just a standard LED replacement tube. Mate, it's just a win-win situation. So yeah, great solution. 20 bucks per twin tube fitting, or under 20 bucks to do each one. You can see this pack, it's the pack. It contains 2 tubes, 2 starters. I think they're 19 bucks from your local Bunnings. No affiliation with Bunnings whatsoever. For all my research, that is the absolute best way to do this. If you can find a cheaper solution, all well and good. But for me, this was the way to go. So I hope some of you guys have found this information useful. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the Aussie Shed. Hit the bell so you get notification of any new content. And if you'd like to help out here at the Aussie Shed, you can donate via PayPal and Patreon. Links in the description. And I'll also throw a bit of a link in there to these ripper little wire strippers. Just an eBay link, only cheap, bloody useful. Anyway, as always, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Cheers.